Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we have Matthew Scarborough, 35 years in the electrical industry, 25, I like his bio, it's really quick, as a manufacturer's agent, 5 years as a manufacturer, and 5 years as a software developer for the electrical industry. Currently works at TradeTech Solutions with their product OrdrTrak, which helps you keep track of your orders. That's right. It's established in 2006. He's the president and the owner of that company. We're going to talk about information flows. That's right. Business processes, these kinds of things on the show today. And maybe we'll get into a little bit about how OrdrTrak can help with that. But before we do, we got to go right thing with Satco. Greg Garrett, go to satco.com. What a website. What a company.
Yeah, we talk about business flow and how to sell lighting products. They can do that for you. They can help with just about everything. One of the things I was working on are strip lights. They have skinny strips, the mini ones. They have the wide ones. They have color selectable, wattage selectable. They have wraps. They have vapor tights. Anything you need in a linear fixture, they've got, and they've got all the options that you need. So you got to go to Satco.
Satco.com, satco.com, the right thing, they got it there. And of course, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, NAILD. Where lighting means business, Greg, the old tagline. I've always wanted to resurrect it. Bring back the old tagline. I like that tagline, where lighting means business. I think it's the truth. So check us out. Join us, folks. But for right now, Matthew Scarborough, how you doing, man? Good to see you again.
I'm well. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
It's interesting times we live in. I'm doing fine, and I can speak on behalf of Greg Garrett because I spoke to him 3 times this morning already, and he's doing good too.
We're solid. We're ready.
So
it sounds like you guys have talked a little bit, Matt. Yeah, give me a background on what your company is, TradeTech.
Sure. As your partner just mentioned, I've been in the electrical industry for 35 years. 25 as an agent, more on the commodity side than the lighting side. I think we all understand the separation there. I did everything there from my first job was working in the warehouse and ultimately ended up being the principal. So I did everything from warehouse to signing the checks. Unfortunately, closed that business in 2010. But to parallel what we're going to talk about today, technology, if you will, as a young engineer, in 1988, we had a computer that was given to us by a manufacturer and ended up on my desk because I was the engineer, if you will. Started writing software to help the agency back then. But like, a great little company it was, nobody wanted to change. So therefore, I wrote software and it just sat on the shelf. Finally, in 2003, when I purchased the company, I was able to implement that software based on the fact that now I was the one making the decisions. And the funny part of that story is the young lady who was the office manager, who was the one keep saying no, was and still is my wife, if you will. And a year after we implemented it, she literally said, "How do we do without it?" I said, "Thank you." So that's 2003. In 2006, other agents wanted to purchase the software I developed. So I created TradeTech Solutions as a company to be able to sell that under. That company still paralleled the rest of my career. So 2010, I finally, sad to say, ended up closing the agency business due to economics. Kept writing software, went to another agency, went to a couple manufacturers. And in 2018, the organization NEMRA, which had a software underneath it called Iris, so they had a division called NEMRA Technologies, they asked if I would take the TradeTech company I have and purchase that division. And so we put that together, and what that allowed me with TradeTech was to go 100% full-time with TradeTech and no longer sell wire and cable. Even though I miss selling wire and cable, I really love what I do today. So with that, for the last 5 years, I've been developing software, particularly for the agents. It was, as we fast forward to early this year, actually probably late last year, we started to develop what we're going to talk about, which is OrdrTrak, which is the software that will allow all parties in the electrical industry, and for that matter, any industry, but manufacturer, electrical rep, distributor, and the contractor all have one location to find stuff. And when I say find stuff, we're starting with order status. So, we're always constantly getting, and I say we, our industry, if you will, constantly being asked by the contractor, where's my stuff? Ultimately, the distributor then asks the rep, and then the rep asks the manufacturer. Well, by the time the answer gets back to the contractor, he says, can you check again? Because it's at least 24 hours till he got his answer. So
Right.
that was a long way. That was a long way of saying I've enjoyed my stint here in the electrical industry, but I'm really looking forward to helping the industry move forward in technology.
And I
Okay.
think one of the things that I'm and looking at the website, Mike, if I can go here, is you're right. It's an all-in-one software. I don't know. Is there such a thing as that? Because we've tried to do things like that here, and sometimes you try to combine CRM with accounting, with website, with whatever marketing, and it doesn't work. You have to go all separate, otherwise, or the finance side separate from the marketing side. You think you can do it all in one, huh?
Well, all in one is a buzz phrase, and with that said,
Sure.
we are starting with order status. So right now, the order track, what you can do on the order track is you can check order status with any manufacturer that is connected to us. So the way, of course, we connect is through the technology that exists today through an API connection. And for those that are listening that might not quite understand what that is, it's really two computers talking to each other. So somebody will come to our website, and they don't even have to come to our website because we can also API to them so their computer can talk to our computer. But it allows them to track order status, not just by one manufacturer, but by multiple manufacturers. So if they have a project, and let's just say the project has, 5 manufacturers. So the distributor gave a rep 5 POs for 5 different manufacturers. And today, manufacturers will say, well, you can go to our portal and check that out. Well, that means a distributor would have to go to 5 different portals. So a distributor will obviously ask a rep to do it, and then the rep will go to the 5 different portals. So all in one right now means you're able to go to OrdrTrak and get all of your order statuses in one location. As we progress, you're also actually it is live also. You can get inventory checked there for all manufacturers. You can get, if you're a rep, you can get pricing.
Okay. So I understand. I understand. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to loop back to OrdrTrak in a minute. Okay. But I want to talk more about these information flows and some of the dams and barriers to this flowing of information. One of the major problems I see with the agency model and the work that happens is that a lot of people lie about timelines in order to get the order in the first place. So software can't solve that problem for us. You know what I'm saying? When a rep or an agent says, "Yeah, it's going to be available in 6 weeks," sometimes they're just saying that actually, and it's not true. And I've noticed that in my practice that software can't solve those issues. So those issues aside, though, those issues that come from that, why does it seem that the more sophisticated we become, the more complicated and difficult everything seems to be? Like you mentioned earlier in the show, that your wife said, "I can't believe we survived without this software." But it seems to me that the more we go down this road, the more the information is not enough. Does that make sense, Matt? It's almost as if the problem is perpetuating itself faster than the solutions can catch up to it.
Well, certainly that, to your point, we're expecting instant gratification in 2022. And when we start to realize we can get that, we want more. And I think what you're pointing out is the desire for us to want more, and then the ability for us to keep track of or keep technology abreast with that. And the industry, I liken the industry into 3 different technology divisions. Number one, I call it 1992 technology. And that's people who do email and think they're electronically savvy. Okay. And then there's Y2K technology, which is really file transfer, which really upped the ante, in the late 90s when you were able to take one document and pass it along and nobody had to re-enter things.
Mhm.
Well, today's technology truly allows us to be that instant gratification. So if a computer has it, we should be able to offer that to whomever's looking for it in a secure fashion. So that's our biggest challenge, I think, is to get the industry to understand it's not as difficult as they want it or as they think it is, because they're not technically, oh, how do I say it, savvy, I guess.
I think it's more difficult than we think it is, and here's why. We may be talking about two different things, though.
Yep.
Matt. You understand what I mean? So, like, you take something like Uber or Facebook, right, or Amazon. Even I work on Amazon every day. I'm very familiar with their Amazon Seller Central. If you look at their softwares, what they're doing is not that complicated. Okay? It's actually, Uber is a really, really simple idea. It's genius. Like, I'll hand those guys, I can't remember what their names are, but yeah, that was a genius idea. But it's actually, the result is the actual technical side of it is really quite simple. Same thing with Facebook, Google. Google's a one trick pony, Facebook's a one trick pony. These companies that seem to be like software gurus that can do it, they're actually not doing things that are all that complicated. What you're talking about is actually very complicated. It's got multiple different stakeholders whose data is extremely valuable to them, which is the opposite to Facebook, where they don't care about their data. They give it away for free, right? They give it to Facebook. We own your photos now. But yeah, sure, right? And and so it's the opposite. Problem is that you have these fences around the data. You have complexity ingrained at every single different level. You have a multitude of different stakeholders who want different outcomes, and everyone thinks it can be as simple as Facebook or Uber. And why don't those guys tackle the problem? And I think the reason why they don't tackle the problem is because they know it's too complicated. And so I actually see the issue as not being simple. I think it's a very complex problem, and the value of the service is difficult to say. Who is it valuable to? Is it valuable to the manufacturer to share their stock data with everybody? Is it valuable to the manufacturer to give you this information? Is it truly valuable to them? Is it it's valuable to the user of the software possibly? And so how do you deal with those different silos and walls and dams and all the different things on this flow of information that actually probably is simple technically for you to do, but the complexity comes because of the different stakeholder values and interests in it. Is that a fair spiel I just gave?
Yeah, I'll say it's fair. And you point out the technical part is the simple part, and it truly is. It's the understanding of the technical part being easy that we're challenged with. Now, when I say that, of course, what I'm referring to is if I speak to an organization. Typically, I'm not speaking to the IT person. I'm speaking to someone in sales who thinks it's complicated. So when we talk about sharing things, their mind goes to, oh, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, so we're not going to be able to expend that today. If you go to an IT person, and the IT person understands the technical aspects, he or she doesn't understand the business well enough. And therefore, when you talk to them, it's difficult. So to your point, it is a challenge, not technically, but processes, if you will, decisions, political. I mean, whatever the phrases you want to say, for somebody at an organization to say, this makes sense, let's make it happen. And then to your point, you can, as a giver of the information, you can manage who gets and receives. And you can also manage what you get. Again, the technical part is the simple part. The challenge is convincing the industry that it would help everybody in this equation.
What about the trust? I think trust is a huge barrier as well to this kind of stuff in terms of sharing information and wanting, even desiring to do it. How do you solve the trust problem?
So again, the trust, and I've heard that so many different times. The phrase is, "We're not going to allow anybody in our computer." Well, That's the beauty of what we're talking about. No one has to be in your computer. And again, you're in control of what comes out of that computer, whether or not you're the person sitting in front of the computer and actually type something in and either respond to an email or whether you talk to someone on a phone. You're in control of what you're given. Same thing technically. You're in control. You know who's asking for that. It's not my software. I'm just the translator, if you will. When my software requests to a company, certain data, if it's looking for, we also let them know who's requesting it. So it's the same thing as making a phone call. They know that they're talking to ABC distributor, okay, and they know what to give them. The same logic can be put into the software side. So trust is a big thing, and again, trust comes with understanding. Once people understand the ability to manage it, then the trust level goes up.
Let me ask you a question. Have you thought deeply about who is the customer? Like, who is the customer for you? I mean, there's somebody who pays you. Who is that, and is that the right person to be paying?
Well, it's a great question, and the great question is who's the customer? Ultimately, who's benefiting from this application? And the answer is all. Okay, so like I said, it's the contractor who's benefiting because he or she can instantly, from the job site, go on their phone and get this information. Distributors benefiting because they can now, if they get a call from their contractor, they can answer the contractor instantly. Okay, same thing with the rep. Now, when you get up to a manufacturer, they're a customer too because we're giving them a platform that they can share and control the sharing of their data to the people that request from them. So there's a benefit to them too. I mean, I spoke to a manufacturer last week who was very concerned that, well, first of all, let's back up. They understand the API connection, okay, and they've been asked by many distributors to connect to that distributor so they can get stock status, order status, and all of that, like we're talking about. But this manufacturer says, wow, how many distributors are there out there? How many connections will we have to manage? Okay. And I said, well, with what we're proposing is you manage one connection, and that is to us. So there's a benefit to the manufacturer. So the manufacturer is also a customer. So to answer the question, I really believe all people, all companies, I should say, are customer orientated, meaning manufacturer, rep, distributor, contractor.
Who pays for it?
Well, at the moment, all. So that's another reason why I would consider them all a customer, because no one's going to pay if they don't see value.
So, Greta Grip on Lighting has customers, and we have an audience. The audience is not our customers, but they also benefit from the show. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I'm wondering, it's more like spitballing with you about who, like, so for example, you take Facebook. The Facebook user with a profile is not the customer of Facebook. They're the product, right? So they're being sold, right? And I'm wondering to myself is that it seems that most of the benefits accrue to the agents and the reps and the contractors and the distributors perhaps. And so maybe the manufacturers need to be viewed as like an audience or like a, in a way, because for me, like I've developed software. I've developed many software systems in my career, like yourself, and we talked about it the last time we were speaking. And the value of that, of what you're talking about, there's even higher levels of value. I talked to the folks at Sorcery, which is kind of a competitor to you. I don't know if you know those guys, and they want to achieve the same results, but they're in the search for who's going to pay. It's like they know they're going to charge this person or that person, but often I wonder, is that the right person to pay? And it is that, and should, if you change the way you look at it, sometimes the business model emerges more powerfully. You understand what I'm saying, Matt? When you understand that, nobody's going to pay a subscription to get a grip on lighting or make a donation. You want to make a donation? We're going to set up a Patreon account, Greg. You can donate to get a grip on lighting. Like some things don't make sense, right? And so we serve our sponsors, our customers, and that's Satco. On this show, go to satco.com, by the way, Matt, when you're done. satco.com. Yeah, baby. I love that website. I'm speaking from my heart. But when you identify the customer correctly, and then you kind of sort it out, it's like what I see with these software systems struggling, and in my own design of software, it's like who is the audience, who is the customer, who pays. That's such a key thing in order to really accelerate the growth of something like this. Have you thought really deeply about it? You said everyone's a customer. I don't know if I believe that.
Well, the question you're asking is how's it going to be financially stable, and who's going to contribute that? And no one wants to contribute that unless they feel like they're getting value. So, and to your point, what are we going to morph into? As I said, this was a thought as of just last year. We opened it up in April. We're still, putting our foot in the water. So currently we believe the value exists to everyone. Now, based on that, we've had a lot of people say, well, we're not going to pay for that. So in order for them to understand the benefit to them, we do have a free subscription for everybody, if you will. So we're hopeful that that's going to attract them. And then they start to realize why it makes sense for them to, well, in your case, make a donation. Okay. In my case, pay a bill. Okay.
Sure.
So, but yeah, that's part of, the business process is to find out who's going to help financially, reward my company. So we believe right now there's enough value to, all four company types, and historically, a lot of the cost for things like this always falls on the manufacturer.
Agreed.
Okay. So we're not in a position to do that. Now, we believe there's value for the manufacturer, but the manufacturer is not our sole source of income at the moment.
Yeah, I
Because
think the manufacturer should be, like, just spitballing with you here. Like in my model, the one you do whatever you want, obviously with OrdrTrak, but I'm just thinking about it sort of conceptually. These kinds of softwares, I see the manufacturer as like the audience, or like as someone that could participate for this, because they are they getting value? I suppose they're also saving phone calls, like you say, and all that. But the next question after who the customer is what does the customer want to buy? What does the customer actually want to pay for? And I find a lot of when I talk to people about software, and Greg, maybe you've done this before, they're not actually talking about what I want to buy. They're telling me how I should run my business. You understand what I mean? Like, no, you're QuickBooks? You still use QuickBooks? Yeah, I love QuickBooks. Actually, we export all our data and we dump an XML document into QuickBooks once a month. And that's where we store. We don't want to rebuild QuickBooks. That's a general ledger with an AR and AP and it works fine. No. What you really need is SAP, right? Hitler's Revenge, or whatever they call it, SAP, right? You need to do business our way, and if you're not doing it our way, you're wrong. And I find that software model is not asking the right questions about. And Greg, you've done a software upgrade, and it's like they don't ask you those kinds of questions. What is it that you want to buy? And have you asked that of OrdrTrak? And what are distributors? Because this is primarily for the frontliners, distributors, contractors, and agents. What do they want to pay for from an OrdrTrak? What would they want to pay for?
Well, at that same thought, again, being a new platform, we're morphing into what that can be, because like any good software, you produce something, you show somebody, okay, and that somebody says, hey, this is a great idea, but can it do this? Can it do that? And next thing you know, you start to make it do this and that. So early adopters get the opportunity to make the software what they're looking for, what benefits them. Because to your point, what benefits, a distributor in New England, if you will, may not be the same benefit that a distributor in California. And those that come at the end, pick up the QuickBooks because it's already been developed. And then they morph themselves into QuickBooks. But at the beginning, QuickBooks had to have some kind of interaction with somebody to build what they did. The other part of my world, the rep software, I told you I started building that in 1988. It's only become what it is today is because we morphed it by listening to what the customers want and need. Just this morning, I was in, Nick's office, and a customer asked for something, and we're like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're going to build it, So to your point, it will become what it is not today. And we don't exactly know what that is. We think we know, but I'm not the distributor in New England. I'm not the distributor in California. Eventually, we'll listen to them and hopefully build something they'll be happy with.
And of those 5 modules you have, is there one you feel is you're strongest at right now? I mean, it's got to be, right? You got to have one a little better than the other. Rank them. Where are you at?
Well, there's no question that's the case. So what you're referring to is the rep software that I've developed. And, if you go back to 1988, the first thing I said was quotations. We're going to manage that. So that has historically been the one that we've, created throughout the years to be as robust as it is. So I would absolutely say the quotations is the most robust platform we have, and then the other one, which is the inventory control. So interesting enough, if you look at my website, it's called Total Order Entry, or affectionately we call it TOE for the record. Okay. And yeah, a lot of discussion when we decided to name it that. But with that said, we call it that because, again, in this world we live in today, there's no reason for somebody to enter something that somebody else has done. Okay, a contractor has an electronic system that should be able to be passed to the distributor, so the distributor can use their computer system, which probably is not QuickBooks, one of the other ones you might have mentioned, that they're managing their stuff. But nobody should have to re-enter it into there. And the same thing with that going to the rep. Okay, so point is that total order entry was developed in replacement for what I purchased out of Nemra, which was Iris, which was inventory control. As many reps as you well know will have consigned inventory, and off-the-shelf inventory programs for a rep doesn't work. So we built that. But where I'm heading with the thought process is that total order entry means no matter what manufacturer you're representing, whether you inventory or not, this should be your order entry platform for all of them. You should not have to go into manufacturer one's portal and enter an order, manufacturer's 2 portal, and so on. So that's, if you're looking at our 5 modules, definitely quotations number 1, total order entry 2, and I love them all, by the way. So I shouldn't say one's better than the other because they all do a great job at what they're designed for.
Okay, I want to dig in a little bit deeper on this, and maybe I'm betraying the audience, and we're not talking about lighting, but I think this kind of business processes is something our audience is interested in as well. I can't remember that other fellow we talked to. It was a very popular podcast, and I can't remember what the name of his company is off the top of my head. But so I want to dive into this 1988 situation, okay, which is the genesis. Computer gets plopped on your desk. What was the problem with the quotations? What was the problem?
The problem was they were on paper, and the quotations that I had done as an inside person was on my desk, and no one else in the organization knew, outside nor inside. So when another inside person would receive exactly the same thing, it turns out that they duplicated what I did.
Right. So you're solving the same problem. You're solving the same problem is that people didn't have access to the information, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Right? And so you started that in 1988. So you're giving people access to pertinent information related to their the products they've ordered or they've been quoted on or the stock of that product and all that. So your goal then from the beginning was to give people access, easy access to information. Now, did they have to go to your computer or did you network those computers so that in 1992 or whenever you
19,
took it over?
1982, there was only one PC, so that was the network. Okay.
Okay.
So
All right.
within a year or two, there came additional PCs and we ended up having a network. So this is when I truly took what I developed and put it on the network. So at that point, it was accessible to any computer that was connected to the network. So unlike today, there wasn't the internet. So exterior salespeople weren't accessing it. Okay. Although you could, there was VPN, so you could go home and dial up and get in, but challenging. That wasn't going to happen. But I like to say it was the ability to communicate without having to communicate. And of course, what I mean by that is sharing information and not ever being able to say, I didn't know that. Now, to your point, how did you get them focused on it, if you will, to be able to absorb that information? And that's the challenge we still face today.
Yes. Well, you have to have buy-in, right? So that's important for a software. I want to ask you one more stream of questioning here because I'm personally interested in this. Okay. So we had a podcast on lighting controls and we were talking about internet over power line. So that's where the signal is sent along the power line with the electricity to the device. And this operates at a maximum effectiveness of 16 bytes. Okay. But actually, when it comes to the lighting controls problem, 16 bytes gets you over a million different programming scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's more than enough for, dim, color tuning, dimming, and ons and offs. Like you're never going to get past probably 50 different scenes. And so 16 bits is way, way more than anyone needs, okay,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to manage a lighting control system across an entire enormous building. Okay, like think about that for a second. All right, so we have the horsepower. Do you find that when people are developing software, they look at software, they make it too clunky and chunky? And like for example, some of the new languages that have come out from Google Angular, and I'm going deep here, Facebook's React, and some of these other kinds of softwares, when really what the business process that you want to address could be addressed at a much, like with a Commodore 64 connected to the internet, really. Is it in stock? Yes, no, or 1-0 or whatever, right? Like we're not talking about very complicated information. And a lot of the security risks come in from those outside softwares and how they are created and built for connectivity and four-dimensional databases and different ways of entering those databases. What languages do you use, and do you agree that, in fact, we're getting too complicated with the software and that the gig level stuff is not necessary to achieve the aims that we're trying to aim? Maybe in the user interface we want to use that, but in the background, a lot of these different calculations are actually quite simple.
I would agree 100% with you. And what I'm doing by agreeing with you is saying that old technology is not bad technology. Okay. New technology is not great technology. So the technology that does the job is the technology that should be implemented. So, while I don't have the original code that I built in 1988, that was, you couldn't run that on a platform today. But historically, as we started building in the late 90s, I still have some code that was built in 2000, 1998, okay, because it does a great job. So there's no reason to change that. Meanwhile, OrdrTrak, is our latest platform. So we implemented, from what is today the technology, but we knew what was best to be able to do that. So people, when they hear buzzwords, so we, if you're familiar, and I know you are, with software programs, and we use everything from classic ASP, okay, all the way to C# and SQL databases, okay, and everything in between. And when you start telling somebody who thinks they understand technology, well, you still use that? It's like, well, yeah, because it says yes or no, and that's all you need. Why redevelop something that's been through its paces and it works wonderfully?
Yeah, for sure.
Now, meanwhile, now when you ask, can it do this? Can you display graphs instead of, a spreadsheet? Okay, we have to move up with technology now, and that's what we do. So, our platform, well, it's forever changing. In some respects, it's not because
Well,
it
I think
doesn't have to.
Well, the other thing too is that I find there's a lot of emphasis on user experience and not enough emphasis on business processes and actually efficiently executing business processes in the software that work for me. And when I looked into software heavily in 2015 and 16 for my own business. I ended up developing my own ERP system, which we use today. Cost me a fortune, by the way. It was a pain in the ass, but it works beautifully for everything I want it to do. It works exactly the way I want it to do, the way I want it to work, and I'm continuing to develop it all the time. But my observation of it is that you get lost in some of these user experiences that people are imagining in their heads in the business process. The actual execution of a simple business process gets lost in those developments. And so there's a lot of this right now in the industry, vis-a-vis whether it's what you're doing with OrdrTrak, which is connecting people, and Sorcery is another company that's trying to do a very similar thing to what you guys are doing, for the reps and the agents. There's definitely a need, and the reason why I bring up Sorcery is because you guys it's wide open right now. I mean, everybody's going to be using this in 15 years in some way, respect. It's going to happen, and I bet you there's going to be multiple players in the space. So. But what I would like to see is this approach in the lighting control scenario, Greg, where the people are stepping back from these complicated user interfaces on phones, and where they're really simplifying, which I really liked when Energy Focus was talking about the power line, or the Internet over power line, as a way for this industry. And I know I'm talking to you about this on OrdrTrak, Matt, but I think it matters. The way we design software should be elegant and as least heavy as possible in its weight in terms of what it needs in gigs and bytes and all that sort of stuff. And if we can get away with 16 bytes to control the first Canadian place here in Toronto, or that's all you need to run a lighting controls program on Square One Mall, the largest mall in Ontario. That's 16 bytes is all you need. Then use 16 bytes, Matt. Like, why are we trying to do things in a way that's inefficient? I don't understand it, and I understand the need for the user interface, but if we can simplify and get things away from this consumer electronics model where everything has to be on a phone. Some things have to be on a computer, Matt. And I think OrdrTrak, while you can look at it on your phone, is probably best used on a computer. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And, as I discuss all of my platforms with people, I say there are certain things that I believe the phone is useful for, but when it's all said and done, you're not going to enter an order on a phone. Meaning you're not going to be, putting 20 line items for a manufacturer and things like that. So the phone has its place, but the computer, I mean, truthfully, that's why this phone I got, is the wide phone, because you need a wide screen to do things. Your phone can only be so much to you. So, you hit on so many different things about speed. We're constantly thinking, so we're web-based, so everything is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and so no matter where you are in the world, it's got to come from Grand Rapids, Michigan to you. And in the internet world, it could go through China before it gets to, Detroit, if you will. So we're all about making sure that we're not overburdening that transmission. So to your point, if it works with 16 bits, we're just going to transmit 16 bits. If we need 32, then we'll develop it with 32. And it's going to be based on the input that we get from the customer, what it is that we have to develop, and then what we have to develop it with, if you will.
Matthew Scarborough, TradeTech Solutions.com. Check them out, folks. I'm going to make one more comment that, we often talk about sustainability, Greg, in the lighting industry and stuff like that. One of the major wastes of electricity in the world, folks, is all that data stored in the cloud. All those enormous software programs, all your Google Docs that are sitting somewhere on some server in San Francisco or wherever the heck it is that you never touch and never use, storing all that data uses a ton of electricity. So there's going to be a new wave, Matt. It's going to be electronic waste or digital waste needs to be. We have too much digital waste. I'm telling you, it's going to come. Folks, if you made it to the end with us today, we got to talk a little bit about Satco, Greg Eric. Go to satco.com. Late thing, right thing.
That's right. We talked about their linear fixtures. Their strip fixture that goes up to 10,000 lumens. There's not a lot of people that have that 8-foot fixture. It's almost like a high bay.
Yeah.
Aisles, perfect application. They also have color selectable on a lot of them. Vapor tights, wraps, slim and wide. Anything you need, linear. Satco is a ticket.
Satco, baby. satco.com, and of course the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. That's right. Where lighting means business. Well, it's really different tagline now, but I remember that when I joined NILD, where lighting means business, because that's what it means to me. It's business. That's right. We sell lighting. And we thank Matthew Scarborough today for joining us, talking about TradeTech Solutions and his product OrdrTrak. He's got a bunch of other ones on the site there. Go to TradeTechSolutions.com. Also, you can check out his LinkedIn and his YouTube and Facebook, which we posted to the Get a Grip on Lighting website. Bye for now.